In this video, I'm going to show you how to edit MIDI. So I've got 3 tracks here, and I've recorded some data into each track. Here's what the whole session sounds like right now, unedited. So that's not bad. This is all stuff I just recorded directly. I recorded each track with a MIDI keyboard, just playing it all in. You see I've got a couple notes here at the end that didn't quite get cut off, the same even. Some of this track here, some of the notes aren't exactly on the grid. You can kind of see. Let me look at the this MIDI editor view, and so you can kind of see as I zoom in here that, you know, this is a little bit before the beat. So I've got, my performance is not great. So there's some things I can definitely clean up in here. So I can do cleaning up in this view. I can also do work directly in the track as well. So if I want to do that, I need to go from clip view to note view. And so now what I can do is I can click on a note and then adjust it and move it wherever I want. I can do it simply by clicking on the note, and then once it's this little hand tool, I can click on the note and then just change the note. I can also change the duration by moving the cursor to the beginning or end of the note and then making it longer or shorter. And you'll notice that because I have grid mode selected here, it's going to snap everything to the grid. A couple nice shortcuts that we have is to be able to move notes. I can move it with the hand, but I can also use my up and down arrow keys on my computer keyboard. So some other things I can do besides moving them up or down is I can also move them right and left. And let me actually switch views here again. So I will go and hit this button down here, which is now I'm in my MIDI editor. And so if I click on a note, and I can use my up and down arrows. Now to move the note right or left, now you'll notice actually that it didn't move it right or left. So I'm using the right and left arrow keys. To actually adjust the note horizontally, I'm going to use the, on my keypad on my computer, the plus and minus. And what I'm doing is I'm nudging it by whatever the nudge value is, which is up here under nudge. I can select this, and so right now it's doing 8th notes. So if I set 16th notes, now it's doing it by 16th notes. And if I set it to quarter notes, and I select the note, so there's quarter notes. And then if I do half notes, now it's moving it by half notes. So unfortunately, with the nudge tool, it doesn't move it according to the grid. What I have to do is I have to set it here actually. So if I wanted to move it by 16ths, I would do that. Or if I want to move it by 8ths, I would do this. So, all right, cool. So that's how I can move notes. So plus or minus key, of course I can also do this just with the hand tool as well. But sometimes it's handy if I want to grab a whole series of notes and now move them all. I could certainly just move them like this with my cursor. I'm just moving them with the mouse. Or if I use plus or minus, right, it's moving it by whatever this nudge value is. One interesting little thing about this MIDI editor view is that I can see the grid, but I can't actually see the nudge size. That's this upper here. I have to go over here, this triangle, click on this, and then see expanded grid nudge display and select that. And now I can see the nudge value. And so now I can make this, let's say, 16th notes or 8th notes or quarter notes or whatever I want. Okay. So that's how we can move notes around using, again, the arrow keys up or down. And again, you can do this a whole group of notes. If at some point you want to take a note and I want to move it up an octave, I can hit the shift up arrow, shift down arrow, and that moves it an octave. And again, that'll also move. So if I want to grab, let's say this, all of this, and move it up an octave, I just shift up arrow versus shift down arrow. In terms of copying and pasting MIDI, it works like any of the other program. I can select anything, hit copy or Command C, and then go just select another place in the track. So for instance, I want to start it from right here, or let me just select here so you can kind of see this blinking cursor here. I'm going to hit Command, or I'm going to go paste, and now it pasted that, right? So I can keep doing that, let's say in this next section here, and keep pasting that. So that's how I can create a little loop if I wanted to. All right, delete all that for now. So I'm going to go back to the beginning here. And so one of the handy tools is if I listen to this performance of this particular track, and let me mute or solo this track, and I'm going to turn on the metronome so we can kind of hear it. So you can see, and in fact you can see and hear that I'm not quite exactly with the metronome. So one of the nice things about MIDI is that there's a feature called quantization. So I'm going to zoom out here so I can see this whole region or this whole clip. I'm going to select all the notes. And if I go under this event tab and go to event operations, I can see these different things called quantization, change velocity, all of these. So I can get these here. So I can get quantize here, and I get this quantize window. Another way to get this is if I just select all of this, and I have the Smart Tool selected, so I can do that. And now I'm going to click on here. So I'm on a trackpad, so I'm doing a 2-finger click, and I get this menu, sub menu, and I can go to Event Operations, and I get this same list. So this is then the same as going under Event and these operations here. So I'm going to go here to Quantize. And once I get to Quantize, I can have a few options. Basically, note on is the start note, note off. If I want to quantize that, I can do that as well. Or I can just preserve the duration. And then, so I'll select that for now. And then what I need to do is select the grid that I'm doing this on. So if I want to do, like, for instance, every half note, what will happen is it'll take all these notes and it's going to snap it. It's going to move that note to the nearest half note. And in terms of strength, what this means is if I have 100%, it's going to absolutely snap it to the grid. I can also have it deviate slightly. This is sort of a little bit of what we call a humanization factor. If I want to reduce this a little bit, then it sort of moves them a little bit off of off the grid. So I'm going to keep 100% for now, and then show you what happens. So I'm going to quantize this to a half note. And so now you can see I've got quite a different thing here. I'm going to undo that. So let me quantize it now to a quarter note. That's not what I want. Undo quantize. So let me try an 8th note and apply. And so now you can see it. Everything got moved a little bit. All right. Sometimes what ends up happening is a note or two don't quite happen in the right place. And so I'm actually missing a note in here. And so maybe I need to move all of this over, whoops, wrong way. And actually let me set my nudge size here to 1/8 notes. So there. So now I've got a more of a steady stream of 1/8 notes here. I also noticed that I had a note mistake over here somewhere. So this note is wrong. So let me move it back down. There we go. I'll turn off the metronome. Okay, so quantization is definitely a useful tool. Sometimes we want to kind of make sure everything lines up on a grid and our tempos are exactly the way we want them to be. So what I'll probably do now is quantize each one of these. So I'm going to grab this track and quantize it. So go to quantize, and I think for this one, I'm going to quantize at the quarter note. Because that's my longest value right here, or my shortest value is actually a quarter note. So I'm going to say quantize to the quarter note. I'm going to do 100% and hit apply. So there, I'm going to undo Command Z and now apply again. And you can see the notes moved and I can listen to this. Whoops, I have this one track soloed here. So now I can listen to, let me actually listen to both of these. So this particular track, I'm going to tweak just a little bit more. Part of what's interesting about this particular patch is that if the two sounds are exactly sort of touching one, or like one sound is going right to the next, it does like a little, the connection is a much softer connection. So take a listen to this. So if you notice, this has a very softer attack, whereas this has a very sharp attack. And so it's because there's a little tiny gap in here. This doesn't quite come all the way to the grid here. So this is where I'm now going to turn, I'm going to go back to slip mode. And I'm actually going to move this over just a little bit. Whoops, I've got everything selected, so let me undo that. Let me just select this note. I'm going to trim it just slightly so there's a little bit more of a gap in here. And then this note, I'm going to bring actually all the way to it. So I'm going to have a soft attack here, a strong attack here. I'm going to bring this back. So I have a strong attack on this one, going to a soft attack from here to here, and then finally a strong attack on this last note because of this little gap here. Whoops. So this didn't quite work the way I wanted to. Maybe I'm going to overlap these just slightly and see if that works. Cool. So much better there. So, you know, sometimes we have to experiment a little bit and see what happens. Like you can actually see for this particular one, I actually had to overlap the sounds just a little bit to get the effect that I wanted to. So sometimes we do this. I'll close this. So this is right. And now I'm going to go to this track and I'm going to quantize this. I think this I'm going to do 1/8 notes because let's listen to this one actually. So, I've got some 1/8 notes in here, so I'm definitely need to quantize the 1/8 notes. So I've selected them all, select all here, go to event operations, quantize, and then I'm going to do eighth notes and apply. There we go. Now, there are some other interesting, so this is quantization. So now let's listen to this. And I'd probably want to take these two notes and extend them to the end. And there's a few ways I can do that. One, you can see that the notes are different. I mean, what I'll do is I'll just put this on grid mode, grab this note, bring it down here, and it'll just attach to the grid, and that's all there. That's all fantastic. So there is another handy MIDI event operation, which is I can change the duration actually of notes. So let me select the notes here. I'm going to select all these. I'm going to go event operations, change duration. And now what we get is a few options here. I can set all the durations to the same. So in other words, I think this will set them all to quarter notes. So let's see what happens here. There we go. So every note is a quarter note. So I don't really want that. I'm going to undo that. Legato is a way to actually connect every note. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say legato, and I'm going to have 0 overlap. So everything is exactly, every note will go right to the starting of the next. Like you'll notice that this one right down here doesn't come right to the beat of this measure. So I'm going to say overlap 0 and hit apply. And now all the notes are exactly connected. So this note ends exactly when this next note begins, and it continues on from there. Now what I might actually want to do is overlap them a little bit. So I'm just going to overlap these just slightly. Wait. So there we go. So now there's just a slight overlap. Or maybe we want to have a lot of overlap. Or even more, I'll make them half notes. So 2 beats. I don't like that. I'm just going to go back to no overlap. So it's truly legato. So there we go. So and you can see that there's some other I can randomize different aspects of this. So it's a little bit more random. Add some more human elements to this. I can also do things like remove overlaps or leave a gap and things like that. So I'd encourage you to experiment with the change duration event operation. Okay. Some of the other operations we can do is if I want to, let's say, transpose, I can do that. And so I can simply move things by octaves or by semitones by doing this. So let's say I'm going to bring everything up an octave. Boom, done. Let me go back down to the original. Okay. All right. So so that's under event. That's transpose. We've gone over step input. And then some of these other ones, restore performance, flatten performance, split notes. These are all like sort of specialized techniques that you might want to investigate a little bit. So, so those are some of the basic tools in terms of being able to edit MIDI in Pro Tools. So what I want to do now is I'm going to show you some features in terms of being able to loop sounds. So let's say I want to take each of these tracks. In fact, I'm going to select all three of them. So I'm going to hold down the shift key. So I've selected all three clips here. And if I go under clip and I go to loop, and it'll just tell me how many times I want to loop it. Let me just say 3 times. And I hit OK. So I have my first. So there's 1, 2, 3 loops. So it's not like it adds an additional, it's not like the first one plus 3 loops. It's the total number of performances of that section of music. So now when I play this, like, let me start here. Right? So it's a nice way to kind of copy and paste things, but could basically loop them. Now, the interesting thing about Pro Tools is when you do this is that if I start actually editing one of these tracks, right, let me grab this note right here and move it. So you'll notice, let me go back, it didn't adjust the other notes. It only adjusted this one right here. Right? So like this note and this note. So you'll actually notice that the little loop symbol that's here and here went away because I adjusted that note. I'm going to undo that. And now the loop symbol comes back. So whenever you change one of these, what will happen is that depending on where you change it, whoops, that's all the notes. Let me grab the last note and get out of here now. And now you can see this has lost the loop, but these two are still looped. So that's a little different. Other programs, what happens is when you change one of the loops, it changes all of them, all of those regions. So if you decide that you want to make a change somewhere, so this is really nice if you want to have some changes and, you know, like this one only changes, but now I want to take this one. I'm going to take this and copy and paste it. And I hit paste. And let me move that here. And then I can also, I'm just going to do it once. So I'm just going to do that. You'll notice actually that it actually, it keeps looping it here. So I'm just going to go to there. So, all right. So that's how I can loop then tracks as well. So hope that helps.